Thank you. Hello. I'm going to be sharing the my thoughts about the first 8 chapters of the new book that we are reading. I think it's super sweet that Elizabeth Elliot wrote this to her daughter, although, and I don't think this was the case. But like, if this is the first time that he's addressing all these issues with her daughter, I think it was like one wedding too late. Because honestly, each chapter is probably enough to have like theological discussions about it. So I think it was just like a wedding gift, as you know, these are my feelings and my thoughts for you, but not that. I think she prepared her daughter well, deep enough in this issue so that the daughter wouldn't be like, what are you talking about, right? So chapter number 1, the God who's in charge, talks about God's sovereignty, how we are not for one moment of our lives at the mercy of chance. R.C. Sproul has said something about that, right? Like, there are no maverick molecules or maverick atoms in the universe. Chapter 2 talks about, the pursuits of traditional roles, and it asks the question in page 4, is being a woman fundamentally different from being a man? And I think, this book was written, according to Elizabeth Elliot, in the height of feminism, 1958. So probably, I don't know, second wave. So obviously a lot of women, and to this point, right, to this time in history still, we're questioning, is bearing a child necessarily mean that the better should care for it, right? And we see women now aborting babies because they don't want to care for the child, right? Like, that's what women in the feminist movement think about being a woman, that you have to have the same rights as men, and men don't have to stop working or even carry a baby to term. Therefore, to be equal to them means to have the same, or to do the same things that they do, which is to work, to get out of the house, and not to have the duty or responsibility to raise a child. And I think, for all I know and all I have read, which is not extensively, that's basically the argument for what led to Roe versus Wade, plus personhood and all of that stuff that we talked about in Love Thy Body. Chapter 3, Where to Hang Your Soul. She's talking about submission to husbands. Obviously, submission to the Lord first. How worship is not a feeling. Worship is not an experience. And sometimes we go to church thinking, we're gonna feel great, and sometimes even when we don't feel great, we are still commanded to worship the Lord. Page 6 says, what I must do after church, right? What so and so said or did to me, etc., etc. So it's those little things that, if we do believe the great things that we say we believe in, then all the little things will be taken care of. Chapter 4 talks about, the title is A Daughter, Not a Son. And she continues to talk about God's sovereignty, and how we sometimes hear the expression, the accident of sex, as if being a man or a woman were a triviality. And I don't know if this is, this is the chapter where she says that she wanted a son. Like, she felt very sure that every man wants a son first. And so she prayed for a boy. And then when she found out that Valerie was a girl, then obviously, she became their world and all of that. And so she trusted that it was God who had given Valerie to them. And I think she rests in, again, the sovereignty of God controlling all things. Chapter 5 talks about creation, woman for man. It just made me think, page 11, the end of page 10, it says, it is not hard to think of God's greatness when you look at the sea and an immensity of horizon. and sky. It is not hard to think of the power of his imagination when you study the designs of shells. It is not hard to think of it. Of course, it is impossible to comprehend it. And all of that made me think about Romans 1 and how the Bible argues that unbelievers have no excuse. It's obvious that there is a creator and how he upholds everything by the word of his power. And how God saw something that was not good for the first time, but after he created everything else. And it was not good for man. After God saying over and over, it was good, it was good, it was good. Something was not good, which is that man was alone. And so he created Eve as a companion. She's sure that Adam loved the animals who were his companions in the garden, but they were not made, that's just my own comment. They were not made in his image. And so he gave him a helper. And sometimes sometimes people get on Twitter fights about what does it mean to be a helper, right? Because we think, and even sometimes I tell Emerson, which is wrong, I say that you just want me to do your menial tasks for you, and that is wrong. Because like being a helper is just not making your husband a sandwich. Because God himself receives the title of helper. I think it's in Isaiah. I'm not sure the Bible verse, but we were made to fit him to fit Adam, right? To fit our husbands we were made for something. And then this was the original idea. And I love how obviously she doesn't even argue for women's roles. I mean, she's just writing a letter to her daughter, basically a long letter to her daughter. But she quotes, man was not made from woman, but woman from man. Neither was man created for woman, but woman for man. And so all of this goes back to creation, right? And so this is the issue, right? That feminists hate, and Christian women in the church don't like this when they argue for submission or for abuse or for women's preachers, or they just don't want to submit to the rules, the traditional rules, right? That they say it's just like oppressive or whatever. Chapter 6, God made everything in the world. She just talks about basically creation, right? Like by being a jellyfish, the jellyfish glorifies its creator. And by being a jellyfish, it fulfills its creator's command. So there's purpose and contentment in what God, embracing, not just like, I guess, obviously submitting, but not like suck it up, buttercup, I'm a woman, and okay, whatever. I think like there's purpose and contentment in finding joy in what God created you to be. So she talks about the angels who rebelled and they were cast down out of heaven because they were not satisfied. And so I think, Eve saw the opportunity to be something other than she was meant to be. And that's basically why she usurped his husband's role of leadership. And obviously, probably Satan was just right there, prowling like a lion, already ready to devour her. And then Adam was passive, right? Because the Bible does say that the husband was there, looking at all this situation happening. And whether a consultation with whether she consulted with her husband first might have led to an entirely different conclusion. I don't even think I mean, obviously we know that this was ordained to happen, right? But he was passive. So there was rebellion, and there was passivity from Adam too. And so that's why we're here. But yeah, it was just basically pride. And then she talks about in chapter 7 about the right kind of pride. For a woman to be successful, they try to tell us that our happiness lies not in the idea of God in the making of us, but in obliterating the idea altogether. And then she talks about her experiences with South American Indians and how men hunted and women planted, how women made the fish nets and the hammocks and the pots, and how how Valerie was supposed to serve the little boys first. Valerie was only 3 with conversations around them. Just the conversations were exclusively with the outcasts about hunting, spearing, and sex. You know, there was no other choice of vocabulary. Like they wouldn't just call it your wee or whatever. They would just call organs and functions and activities and everyday conversation just the way they are. And so Valerie learned them. And so she asks Valerie, were you conforming to social pressures, you know, because you were just playing girls' games because that's where you live, right? The culture that you live in? Surely not, she says. Elizabeth says, surely it was because you were born a woman, and so you know, right? And so they would ask Valerie when she was little, what do you want to be when you grow up, Valerie? And she would just say, just want to be a mommy. And that's just sweet. And then chapter 8, The Weight of Wings. She keeps on talking about how there are those for whom being a woman is nothing more than an inconvenience, to be suffered because it is unavoidable, and to be ignored if at all possible. I don't know if you've heard this podcast called Sheologians, but they have an amazing series. I think it's like 4 teachings. They talk a lot and they chat a lot. So I just skip the first 10 minutes because I don't like listening to whatever they talk about. But they ended up, it's just like not a preview, but like a condensation of the different waves of feminism. And basically, like the first wave, they were just tired of, you know, I mean, there were abuses for sure. But this is basically, you know, what has just sparked that movement. So she talks about how all of this is the will of God, and how, I mean, you are created with purpose. And then she tells the story of a friend who had dark hair, and she never knew why she had been created with dark hair until God called her to, I think, be a missionary in Shanghai. And then suddenly she realized, I have black hair and I look exactly like them. So obviously the Lord knows what he was doing when he gave her black hair. And that's it. So, I mean, they're really short. I'm sure that there's chapters that will speak more to people, you know, than others. Chapter 10 said something that is just super, super simple. But I was like, whoa, especially for, you know, situations that I'm going through right now, where every stage in life is a gift. So whether you're single, that's a gift, and you are to receive it with thanksgiving. And so I'm sure, like, I hope the teenagers will be listening to this or talking with their moms about it. And so whether you're single or whether you're looking forward to getting married or whatever stage that you are in, God has given you this gift for today, right? This life for today. And I will talk about more when it's just time for chapter 10. But anyway, that's it. Thank you. Bye. And for all.